Good morning once again. This is Dontrin on Rstv, channel 22 Port Harcourt, and I am Catherine Ago. It is a beautiful Friday morning, and to some persons, this is Friday and they are really very happy, not for those of us who will be working also the weekend. And school children as well, they're all happy. Tomorrow isn't going to be school, and some of them actually going on midterm breaks. So it's really going to be a wonderful time out with the family. And from some business persons, they're already at their workplaces or business premises. And to some who are still on their way now, I wish you all a fruitful day, a blessed and a fulfilled day. With me here, in fact, I am going to start with the Vanguard newspaper because we're going to bring to you top stories that are making our newspaper dailies. And I'll be starting with the Vanguard newspaper. So on the Vanguard, I have integrity of our elections non-negotiable. This is coming from the new INEC chair, Amopiton. Then it says integrity of our elections non-negotiable. You find that on page 5 on the Vanguard newspaper. It said we will demonstrate our commitment with Anambra governorship poll, then serve with integrity beyond reproach. Tinubu charges Amupiton. You find that all in page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. And still on the Vanguard, PDP national chair Turaki emerges not consensus candidate. PDP national chair Turaki emerges not consensus candidate. BOT slams Ayamu's forgery allegation as baseless. Diri has lost legitimacy to continue in office as governor. That's coming from the BOT chair. Then stock market capitalization inches towards 100 trillion naira. That's on page 13. That are alleged terrorism. Kano sacks legal team to open defense today. You'll find that on page 11. Then Anambra East local government area boost Soludo with endorsement and donations. Still on the Vanguard, we have PDP Jonathan under pressure to drop 2027 presidential ambition. PDP Jonathan under pressure to drop 2027 presidential ambition. That's on page 12 of the Vanguard newspaper. Then LP crisis. Usman demands former acting INEC chairman's arrest. LP crisis. Usman demands former acting INEC chairman's arrest. Then I'm still on the Vanguard. Election petition. Opposition parties back Senate on shifting burden of proof to INEC. Election petition. Opposition parties back Senate on shifting burden of proof to INEC. You find that all in the Vanguard newspaper. And the next is Punch. On the Punch newspaper, Tinubu to Amupiton, make 2027 poll transparent, violence-free. Tinubu to Amupiton, make 2027 polls transparent, violence-free. The new INEC boss steps in, vows to restore voters' confidence. Tinubu advises on reforms. You find that story on the page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Then here we have wealth means nothing without a good name. Okay, I think so many of us will agree with that. That statement is coming from Kensington Adebutu. The medical tourism spending falls 52% under Tinubu CBN report. Medical tourism spending falls 52% under Tinubu. That's coming from CBN report. Okay, 2027, Jonathan faces mounting pressure to drop presidential bid. We took that in the other paper. Okay, that FG launches nationwide crackdown on oil gold smugglers. FG launches nationwide crackdown on oil gold smugglers. You'll find that story on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Assailants shoot shawarma vendor dead in Lagos. This is really very sad. Someone who's at his own business place trying to make ends meet. Assailants shoot shawarma vendor dead in Lagos. You find that story on page 4 and 5 on the Punch newspaper. Then Anambra poll. INEC team arrives for mock accreditation. Okay, that story is on the page 7 of the Punch newspaper. Okay, so we'll move to the next paper, which is the Nigerian Tribune. On the Nigerian Tribune, we have here, serve with integrity, Tinubu tells new INEC boss. Serve with integrity, Tinubu tells new INEC boss. That my leadership beginning of new chapter, Amupiton, wants INEC staff to use Anambra election to prove commitment to credible election. You find that story on page 23 of the Nigerian Tribune. Land ownership. Oyo government tackles federal government. Land ownership. Oyo government tackles federal government. Says revoked properties no longer belong to FG. Says revoked properties no longer belong to FG. You find that story on page 15 of the Nigerian Tribune. Okay, Rep moved to street president of unilateral power to sack EFCC chairman. That story is on page 24 of the Nigerian Tribune. Students protest. Block highway over killing of 10 in Ondo State, Ondo Road accident. Students protest. Block highway over killing of 10 in Ondo Road accident. This is really a sad news. We're talking about 10 souls gone. You find our story on page 26 of the Nigerian Tribune. PDP convention. How northern stakeholders adopted Turaki as consensus candidate for chairman. PDP convention. How northern stakeholders adopted Turaki as consensus candidate for chairman. You find that story on page 23 and 24. Said PDP BOT dismisses Ayamu's allegation on alleged forgery. The NEC extends crude theft panel to include solid minerals. That story is on page 4 of the Nigerian Tribune. Then the next is the Guardian newspaper. On the Guardian newspaper, Tinubu demands credible elections as Amopiton faces Anambra hurdle. Tinubu demands credible elections as Amopiton faces Anambra hurdle. That's on page 6 of the Guardian. Defections. Makinde, APC senator decry lack of political ideology in Nigeria. Defections. Makinde, APC senator decry lack of political ideology in Nigeria. Like we've seen recently, it's just been defection all the way to APC. I wonder if Nigeria will soon be made a one-party system. But let's see how it goes. Okay, I'm still on the Guardian. We have Kanu Sachs legal team opt to represent self in court. Kanu Sachs legal team opt to represent self in court. You'll find that story on page 9 of the Guardian newspaper. MTN Nigeria here to stay. CEO reiterates at bilateral roundtable. MTN Nigeria here to stay. CEO reiterates at bilateral roundtable. Okay, then EFCC, we recovered 566 billion naira, $411 million, 1,502 properties in 2 years. Okay, I take that again. EFCC, we recovered 566 billion naira, $411 million, and 1,502 properties in 2 years. And like somebody asked earlier, before I came on board, that what exactly has this whole money recovered been used for in the Nigeria's economy? Because every day we keep hearing about borrowing, that they need to borrow more money, and here we have EFCC telling us that the much they've actually recovered. Okay, I move on to the next story here. We have challenging elections in court makes mockery of Nigeria. NAS laments. Challenging elections in courts makes mockery of Nigeria. NAS laments. That story is on page 7. And of course, I believe if our elections are being conducted freely and fairly, I don't think there will be any need for persons or people to go to court. Yes, but the reason people go to court is because they felt they were not justly treated or they were not fairly treated. I believe it's one of the major reasons why elections are being petitioned in court. So from the new INEC chair, if things are gotten well, or if it's been done well like we're all expecting from him, I don't think there will be any need for election tribunal here and there. Okay, here we have 22,050 displaced children back to school in 3 northwest states, says SCI. That's a good development. 22,050 displaced children back to school in 3 northwest states, says SCI. You find that story on page 38 of the Guardian newspaper. Still on the Guardian, we have from promise to paralysis. Inside Akwa Ibom's lost industrial decades. From promise to paralysis. Inside Akwa Ibom's lost industrial decades. That again, Tinubu appeals for understanding over economic challenges. Again, Tinubu appeals for understanding over economic challenges. You find that story on page 38 as well. Okay, we all know that economy is really biting harder by the day, and it's still good to know that the president understands. Then remove 4% FOB levy or consumers bear burden, manufacturers tell FG. You find that story on page 22 of the Guardian newspaper. And the next story here is the Daily Trust. On the Daily Trust, Boko Haram attacks communities in Borno, Yobe. And here we have we killed over 50, injured 70 terrorists, says the military. We killed over 50, injured 70 terrorists. That's coming from our military. Then here we have Tinubu swears in Amopiton, charges him on credible polls. Then NUC approves 13 new courses for varsities. Okay, and after bandits attacks, Katsina communities struggle to rebuild. Here we have another devastating story here on fire incidents again. Fire raises over 500 stores in Kano market. Fire raises over 500